while tax and trade policies of both Republican and Democratic administrations have encouraged corporations to export American jobs through trade deals such as NAFTA, TPP, etc. What would you propose to change that? And this one goes to Colleen.
Well, first and foremost, I do not support the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. Anything that takes away jobs from hardworking people of not only this district, but the entire country is something that I will absolutely not be in support of. I think there's a number of things we can do to help make sure that we are not allowing corporations to move jobs overseas. Making sure that we are working with our Department of Commerce so that we have fair trade practices in place, and we're giving the resources to the Department of Commerce to enforce fair trade practices. For instance, when I was in Senator Gillibrand's office, we worked hard to make sure that there was not steel dumping going on that would flood the market and therefore cause the steel in this country to be too expensive to purchase, and people would buy steel from other countries. And we worked hard to fight against that, worked hard to work with the Department of Commerce to make sure that they had the teeth that they needed to impose duties on countries that wanted to bring imports into this country. Those are the things that I want to work on, that I have worked on, and that I will continue to do once I'm elected to Congress.
Okay, next goes to Steve.
I agree that we need to fight free trade. It has hurt this country, and it has really hurt this district. I talked earlier about the number of good-paying manufacturing jobs that have fled this district, whether it be New Venture Gear, Carrier, Syracuse, China, the list goes on and on. And we need to stop that. And the Trans-Pacific Partnership, as most of you know, is the latest free trade agreement that's on the table. But it's not just another free trade agreement. It is the mother of all free trade agreements. It will be the free trade agreement to end all free trade agreements, because it will have a docking caption, which means other countries can simply pull up and dock into it. It will sacrifice our sovereign immunity. I could talk about this a long time, and I'm going to be short. But it will sacrifice our sovereign immunity. It'll put justice in the hands of 3 lawyers that aren't Americans, and it will lose us more jobs. So we need to fight against the free trade. Something else, even countries we don't have free trade agreements are taking our jobs because they intentionally manipulate the value of their currency down in comparison to the US dollar, and it allows US corporations to go to that country and pay people dirt because of the exchange rate. We know this is going on. We know it's being sponsored by their governments. China is one of the biggest offenders of this. We need to deter corporations from taking advantage of a situation where countries are intentionally manipulating the value of their currency down, and we need to punish those countries. We can do it with policy. And then lastly, we need to create policy that deters corporations from taking advantage of folks in other countries. I represented a class of people in a Fair Labor Standard Act lawsuit because they weren't being paid a fair wage. And I won for them, and I recovered. And then later, that corporation moved its manufacturing facility to an underdeveloped nation where it could pay people dirt. We have to stop that. They go to countries where they can rape the environment. They go to countries where there are no human rights laws.
Steve,
we have to stop that.
There we go. Thank you. Okay, Eric?
I was just about to yield 10 seconds to him, but I'll stay with this. So, yes, I oppose the TPP. I'm going to talk very strongly about John Katko's phony opposition to the TPP. The bottom line, as most of us know, is he voted against it twice publicly, fast track. But when the chips were down, when Mr. Boehner wanted to move a dead TPP fast track proposal onto the floor again, Mr. Katko votes for it. Now, he's going to run around crowing that he's for labor, but with friends like that, you don't need a whole lot of enemies, as far as I'm concerned. We need to be thinking also about improving the Trade Adjustment Act. That hasn't been upgraded and improved for people who've lost jobs due to trade. We also ought to be thinking about just transitions, that there are industries that change. The Haudenosaunee Federation thinks ahead many generations. We should be thinking ahead generations. How do we shift our job opportunities and our society as we see economic change? So I think all of that's important. If we see a movement from conversion from one kind of production to another, we ought to be providing workers the respect to both fight for the jobs, but also fight for the next round of productive employment. As far as tax policies go, I like Jan Chakowski's proposal. She would put in 5 more tax brackets at the upper edges, beginning with $10 million a year, going all the way up to $1 billion a year. And she would ask that someone who earns $1 billion at the billionth dollar, they give back 48 cents to the country that gave them this great opportunity. During the Eisenhower years, the top marginal tax rate was 92%. You know, that flaming liberal Mr. Eisenhower. He appears as a great president, by the way, the more and more. So I would do a Wall Street tax. I would also see, would you allow me to stop at this point?
Yeah, well,
Okay.
thank you. Actually, we got 1 minute rebuttal, so going to Colleen.
I don't really have a rebuttal. I'd just like to add, I think something else that we can do that would be really important is making sure that, we're not allowing countries like China to be able to, import their auto parts, for instance, into this country. I drive an American-made car. I do it on purpose. I choose to drive American-made. I made sure my campaign manager drove an American-made car before I even hired her, because I understand how important it is to keep those jobs here in this country. And when I worked in Senator Gillibrand's office, one of the things that she was working on and I worked on as well is making sure that we were putting imports. We were asking the Department of Commerce to put duties on imports from other countries like China on their auto parts, because they subsidized their parts and we can't compete. We have to level the playing field and make it equal for all countries to be able to compete on things like auto parts in this country.
Steve?
All set.
And Eric?
We're fine.
Okay. All right, before we go on to question 4, I just want